with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Erin Page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin Page, and today's guest is someone who I am recently acquainted with from the Brownstone Institute. We are going to be breaking some news today about an occurrence that happened at the Children's Health Defense Conference, of which I was an attendee. I was not a personal witness to this particular story. However, this gentleman was. I'd like to welcome Jeffrey Tucker to the show. Thank you very much for being here.
Sure, it's my pleasure, and thank you for giving this some attention. I think it needs a lot more.
So let's just hear a little bit about your background and what you were doing at the Children's Health Defense Conference first.
I run Brownstone Institute, which was founded in the spirit of the Great Barrington Declaration to bring common sense public health, a wisdom in a traditional sense, to public policy. And that, of course, has drawn us into the vaccine debate because the culminating point of the lockdowns was to prepare the population for the shots. I did not understand that at the time, but now looking back, it's very obvious. In fact, the funny thing is I was told this by Rajiv Venkaya, a top Gates Foundation vaccinologist, called me in April of 2020 and told me that was the whole point of lockdowns, was to lock down until vaccinate, which I didn't believe him, and I hung up the phone and I forgot about it. Well, looking back, that's exactly what it was. So, of course, this has taken us into areas of vaccines, but then also more broad public health concerns that the MAHA is doing and RFK is doing, and they have many friends in government now. So, so this is my first time to attend a CHD event of one on this scale, and at some point during the event, these two British guys came over to the Brownstone table. We were exhibitors there.
Right.
Kind of warmed up my staff, like, oh, we really want to interview Jeffrey, it's like, oh, nice guys. And they stayed there, 30, 45 minutes. But so by the time I showed up, everybody was like, oh, you're going to love these two guys. They're wonderful guys. They're really against fake meat. So that's all they said. They said, are you willing to be interviewed on fake meat? And I said, sure. So I went over and they turned, and then right before I stood there in front of the camera, they said, oh, here's our new study showing that fake meat leads to autism. And I was a little skeptical, and they showed me the study, and I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to read a study standing here. Anyway, they turned on the camera. And then they asked me a series of, questions like, what do you think about fake meat? I said, well, it's terrible. People should eat real meat. And what do you think about the study showing there's a connection between fake meat and autism? And I said, well, if there is such connection and if there is such study, then I think it should be looked at. That would just be terrible. I mean, it's not a wildly implausible claim.
Sure.
So then the cameraman said, I really would like you to say very clearly that fake meat causes autism and hold up the study. And I said, I'm not going to do that. For one thing, I'm not a scientist. I've not read the study. I don't know of any causal connection here. So, but I will say that if the study does exist, it should be examined. And I think it's something that everybody should look at, something like that. And then they pushed a little harder, and I kind of started getting a little skeptical. And then that was sort of the end of the interview. They took off the mic, and there's more than 1,000 people there, as you know. It was just a madhouse, and so everywhere you go, you're bumping into people. Oh hi, oh hi, oh hi. Here's another session. So I forgot about this, and then I think that night it was a dinner or something. I don't remember. Yeah, that was Saturday night, so that was the big dinner, and 1,000 people, and I just went to bed. I woke up the next morning. I realized I just put together the pieces. I realized, oh, these guys likely are not who they claim to be, and they're trolling the CHD, and they're trying to get people on camera, people like me, but probably many others, to say fake meat causes autism, and then they're going to reveal that this phony baloney study was generated by AI and make us all look bad. So that's I figured it all out Sunday morning very quickly, just upon reflection and examination. I just realized what was happening. So I immediately went to X, Twitter, formerly Twitter, and told the story. I said there's a couple of fraudsters here, and they're trying to make a documentary like Sasha Cohen style, right,
Right.
to make fun of everybody. And so I posted that on X, and so by the time I got downstairs, uh, everybody had been notified about this, and people were very much on alert, including security and people at CHD. Of course, CHD, mortified because they allowed these people in as exhibitors, and and you have to pay a lot of money to be an exhibitor, not a lot, but some. And so um, it's just, it's a sort of situation you look backwards and say, oh, well, all there were many red flags. We should have caught them. We should have excluded them. It's really easy to say backwards on time because once you discover the problem, then, everything is obvious. But it's the same way anytime you read a detective story, when you find out who done it, it's really obvious looking back. There are plenty of clues you should have known all along. And that's part of the fun of detective stories is to discover all the ways in which the obvious thing was staring you right in the face and you overlooked it. I mean, it's just a human trait. And I think that's what happened to CHD. And it happened to me to some extent. And we have to remember, I mean, not really, but kind of. I have to remember that there's an assumption when you're at these events that everybody is a friend. We're part of a community. The world's very hostile to these views. We're fighting an uphill battle. We're battling the most powerful corporations and companies in the world. And when we can finally get together as a community, there's an element of trust and a great deal of exuberance, and also a kind of reluctance to hurt people's feelings, right? So if somebody has a kind of a crazy idea, I use the example of a fake study showing that eating waffles causes baldness. It causes baldness. Okay. So I generated this study just to show anybody can do this. And so if there was an exhibitor saying don't eat waffles that cause baldness, you might in your head think, oh, that's a little crazy, but maybe not entirely crazy. I don't know. But you're not going to be mean to them. And if they put you on camera and try to get you to endorse them, I mean, you might do it or you might not, but there's a desire to kind of help other people in the community and overlook, uh, sort of sketchy claims and that sort of thing. Because, we live in strange times and the truth is terrifying enough. So, you're kind of, you're kind of a little bit broad. You're emotionally prepared to be broad-minded and also helpful. So when they put on the camera and say, please endorse our study, say that fake meat causes autism. I mean, you're kind of inclined to want to help them just because you sort of, and the other thing is that you have to have, and this is true in all of life, you have to have a presence of mind to say no,
Right.
like anytime, and this is true in all of life, you go to a restaurant, there's a very good salesman trying to push the special of the day on you. Oh, you'll love our chicken à l'orange. It's the best I've ever had. It's the best thing. It's easily the best thing on the menu. And the whole time and the person's really nice, you don't like chicken, but you suddenly are afraid to hurt his feelings. You order it anyway. Then after you get it, you think, why did I do that? I preferred the beef. So this happens to us all the time, door to door. Salesmen. I mean, it's like people on the phone, yeah, but spam callers. This is Google calling. It seems like your account might be compromised. People get ensnared in these kinds of scams all the time. And when you're most likely to get ensnared in them is when you least likely expect them. And you wouldn't have expected that at CHD. Well, I woke up that morning, put together the pieces, wrote about it, went downstairs. Everybody was concerned. They had not showed up yet. And then they finally did show up. And I confronted them and they denied it, said, oh, no, 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 we're authentic. You're really hurting our feelings with these claims. This is really very sad. Um, I think the guy said to me, you really are hurting my feelings and making these claims about us. We're good guys and we're just trying to get people to eat healthy meat. But I knew that I put it together in my mind. And so I said, look, you're going to be kicked out of here and your film's all confiscated. At which point they grabbed their camera and their 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 discs or whatever, their cards, and left, but leaving, the light, their placard, their bags, their materials, all these things. So they were gone, and so then it was just the next step was just trying to figure out who they really were. They used fake names. One of the most ridiculous name that the top charismatic guy was using was Aldrich Willows. Aldrich Willows, right? So, but my webmaster at Brownstone looked at their website and looked through the code and found his real name was Lewis Wilson. And they run, and the other one's name, you have to look it up. It's on the article. But they run something called the Center for Climate Journalism, something like this. And they're professional undercover guys. I mean, they've been doing this for a while. They posed as donors to the Heritage Foundation. They got some hidden tapes. They just go around trying to humiliate people,
Right.
by telling them what they want to hear and then exposing themselves as being like, oh, well, we were just lying. How come you believed us? See, you're no good. You're just fraudsters, like that. But they're the fraudsters. And the big story of this is that at CHD, they were the main purveyors of fake science throughout the entire community, going around to everybody promoting their fake study. And we figured it out and called them out and kicked them out. So that, in other words, we are policing our own. I think that's the important message. The only question in my mind is, what are they going to do with the material they got on Saturday? They had planned to tape all day Sunday, but they got run off, but they might have enough material to make a funny video or two. So who are these guys? Well, as I say, they're sort of professional hoaxsters. That's what they call journalism means they dress up in, whatever beards, a big nose and glasses, or, whatever. They masquerade as something they're not, and then try to ensnare people in hoaxes. Their organization itself, when you trace through the funding trails, it's just the usual NGOs associated with climate change, but funded by, Bloomberg and IKEA and the Rockefeller Foundation and everything else. And I don't know how deep their connections go to pharma or to intelligence services. I don't really know. I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that they are not just small-time actors. This is an elaborate plot that I think started all the way back in March of 2025. And I say that because that was the very first snapshot that archive.org took of their website. So I think they've been plotting this all along and corresponding with people for many months, and many friends of mine have received their study. I will say one more thing about the study in question. When you're in this world that we're in, you see half a dozen new studies a day, right? I mean, they're just pouring out like crazy, and people sending them to, oh, look, here's a new study, there's a new study. You don't have time to look at all of them. I mean, it takes a long time to examine any kind of scientific paper for its credibility. I've learned to become a speed reader and figure these things out because there's so much fake science out there that are backing the establishment causes, and it takes time to debunk it. But when a study comes in that seems to sort of reinforce your biases in a way and has a vaguely plausible claim that maybe it's just a little bit surprising, there might be an inclination to just go, oh, I don't have time to read this. I'll forward it to my friends or whatever. I mean, that's sort of what happened. I think what happened in this case is they pushed their luck too far. They'd had so much success so far between, let's just say, the summer and this event, with everybody just going, oh, great, thanks for the study. I'll pass it on to Bobby or whatever people were saying. I have no idea. That they began to get a little bit reckless.
Right.
And then it was their sort of recklessness that triggered me. And I tell you what triggered me is when they were pushing me to say these magic words, cause, right? They want to say that fake meat causes autism. That's what I began to reflect on that, because the issue of causation in the health sciences or social sciences or natural sciences, any sciences, is the single most difficult problem. We know that all things are subject to the law of cause and effect, but finding out what causes what is the most difficult problem in science. So they were trying to get people to say that one causes the other, even though they had, absolutely no evidence of that, and there's no chance they could have evidence of that. So that's what made me realize these guys are probably up to no good.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's an important point, because I do think there's a plausibility of a correlation, for example, between these fake meats and all of the ingredients that are in them and, perhaps some kind of
Poisoning.
neurodevelopmental disorder.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not
So,
crazy. It's not a crazy
right,
claim. It's not a crazy claim. But the other thing, there were two other considerations that made me realize that it was probably fake. Because I just looked at it very briefly, and when I finally got a copy of it, I realized it had no author. So that should be the first sign. But
right,
uh, uh, the fake meat is relatively recent. Autism is very old. Okay,
right,
so there's that. The other thing is that it's not likely that a lot of mothers of young children are giving their kids the Impossible burgers.
right.
That's not likely. And so just the connection alone is just crazy. But even if you could somehow come up with some relationship of some sort, I don't know how you would do it, but the issue of causation is really important. For example, I could demonstrate there's a tremendous connection between eating caviar, drinking champagne, and being wealthy. Uh, but if I said that there's a causal relationship, like if you eat caviar and drink champagne, you will get rich, you could immediately see the problem. Though that is not correct, right?
Right.
You've taken a leap from a correlation to causation without any kind of justification. Um, so this is why we have to be really careful about these causation claims, and 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 I think for the community associated with CHD, which many of whom have vaccinated, have injured children,
Sure.
um, all these people are very, very, very reluctant to finally say, I think it was the cocktail of vaccines that were given to my baby uh, that caused this neurodevelopment problem. All right, that's a strong claim. We now have vast amounts of evidence that that is true in many, many cases. Maybe not all, but in most cases. But the community that has been saying this has been very reluctant to do this. I mean, you have to think about it from the point of view of a parent of a child who's been injured in this way. This is your precious creation, the most important thing in the whole world for you, and there's an element of kind of culpability you feel, like, why didn't I say no?
Mhm.
What have I done to my child? I mean, that's a very, very difficult conclusion to come to. So it's not as if parents are just thrilled to scapegoat vaccines. I mean, that's not the case at all. It's kind of the last thing. You would much rather believe that it was genetic, it was inherited from the family line, that it was just bad luck, and it was just luck of the draw, whatever. You'd rather believe anything other than it was a decision that you might have been able to stop if you'd been more informed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even after the fact, I was privileged enough to be at an event last night with Aaron Siri, the attorney for ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network. And it was very interesting. But one of the things he says is, these parents don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to take the most socially polarizing position and completely ostracize myself from my friends and family and, become a pariah within my community. Parents just don't do that, and often for the sake of their children. So I think, I mean, I know personally, having been quote unquote anti-vax for 20 plus years, it has certainly cost me friendships and relationships
Mm.
and community and all of the things that, are necessary for, human survival. So it's not a conclusion that we are, coming to with, some
With
kind of,
delight and
right.
yeah. Yeah, this is really going to be advantageous for me financially and socially. No, it's exactly the opposite, right?
Right,
Right.
right. So I wanted to provide a little bit of context because I mentioned to you offline that, at one point I worked with Autism One, another organization similar to CHD. There are a number of stories that I could tell, but, essentially as a whole, we've had bad actors, we've had provocateurs, we've had even federal agents and people posing as federal agents at some of the conferences, not just Autism One or CHD, but a number of other things. We have had, again, following these kinds of events, there have been very, very significant disastrous kinds of things that have occurred afterwards. Most notably, Dr. Bradstreet, who was a researcher and a doctor looking at GC-MAF, um, which is a whole other story I could get into at another time, but was let's just say his death was very, very suspicious and occurred after a number of federal agents came in and raided his office. Additionally, people like a woman named Carrie Rivera, who was speaking out about her own experience with chlorine dioxide that had really assisted some of these kids with autism, um, again, was sought out by federal agents. So I don't think that this is a small thing. So for those who are listening who are trying to kind of dismiss it as, oh, they're just silly, bad
Pranksters.
actors,
Right.
this is not, this really needs to be taken seriously.
Mhm.
So, and especially now that, you've done the research and we do see connections to some of these very large NGOs.
Sure.
Um, if you were to presume any kind of downstream effects from this, what do you think their aim was? Or
Well, you could just imagine how this would go if they had gotten their way, that they would have come and gone from the event. And then several months would go by and they would have come out with a documentary. Um, Similar to the Sasha Cohen's sort
right,
of filmmaking technique, and started off by saying there's some fakers out there who allege connections between autism and vaccines, and believe that it's the whole Maha movement, and now they're at the highest sense of government. So here's what we did. And they just like we generated a fake study, and sure enough, we got all these people to endorse it. So shows that they don't believe in science. And here's all these people on camera doing the same thing. So they're scientifically naive. They're drawing connections that are unjustified. And now here they are at the highest centers of power, and they're endangering your life with their recommendations. No reason to think that any of the science that they cite is any more or less valid than our fake study. So you can't believe a word they say. So this would have been the documentary, and it would have been a source of great humiliation. I mean, depending on how much money they had, and we don't know how much money they have,
right,
they might have a lot. It could have made the rounds on, at all the film festivals. It could have ended up in theaters. It could have been notorious if it was done well. So I hope that we have stopped that. I can't say for sure. I will say there are a couple of things about this that are a little bit peculiar to me. The other guy's name is Tom Costello, by the way, is the
mhm,
co-founder of the Center for Climate Journalism or something like that. When I confronted them there was another guy who was taking a film of the confrontation. And Tom Costello got very upset and said, turn off that camera right now." And the guy said, and the guy said, "Oh, this is a public space. I can film whatever I want." And so Tom Costello very quickly turned his back to the camera. Like he didn't want his face to be known. And the same thing is true with Lewis Wilson. He didn't want to be on camera either. And after this confrontation occurred, they both deleted all of their social media profiles on LinkedIn, on X, and everywhere. And just putting the clues together, I think it's likely that they did not want their faces shown and connected with what they were doing, because that sort of ruins their fake journalism in the future. But for some reason, they were very. I have a perception that, and it might be wrong, that they believe that their project is now ruined. Now, I can't say that for sure, but something that a scam like this really relies on the element of surprise. So a couple months go by, they come out with their film. We're all shocked. Oh, I met those guys. They seem like nice guys. I can't believe that I went for the hoax, right? That's the way it's supposed to work. But if long before the release of the product, the victims, come out and say, "Look, here's some hucksters that defrauded this event and were lying to people and passing out a fake study," then I think they lose that really critical element that would have made their marketing ploy actually quite effective. And it was kind of a brilliant ploy. It was brilliant in some level. It just so happens that they were caught, right? So that may mean that that they will never be able to get out a product, and it also may mean that the Center for Climate Journalism is now fundamentally compromised and known to be running around doing these hoaxes, which is extremely disreputable form of journalism. The New York Times doesn't do this. I mean, it's known in the industry, it's the worst kind of journalism that discredits journalism itself. So people are very reluctant to do this. And keep in mind, what they were trying to do to CHD is very different from what, for example, James O'Keefe, once with Veritas, now with O'Keefe Media, does, right? So his goal in dressing up and pretending to be on a date or whatever his thing is to get to the truth.
Right.
So, and I don't really like those methods. They're not my cup of tea, but his goal is to find out what's true. These guys, their goal was to perpetuate a fraud. So it's a completely different, deeply disreputable, even evil and immoral. And as my friend Toby Rogers said, imagine showing up to an event with more than 1,000 people, most of whom are the parents of children injured children who have found each other and are experiencing something like hope by being together. And then you show up in that context and lie to everybody, troll everybody, plot some big scheme to make fun of them. I mean, it approaches demon level of malice to have engaged in such a scheme like this. And I think now that we've revealed it, that's pretty obvious. I mean, they're the bad guys in the story. So I think it makes it more difficult for them to pull off their plot. I mean, that said, they got away with their scheme much longer than they should have. And I understand why. It was brilliantly hatched. Everybody's busy. Nobody has time to really read this or read that. We all have confirmation bias. We're all looking for things that confirm our worst suspicions. And even something that seems laughable when you state it now, in the light of day, away from the event, that there's a relationship between fake meat and autism. Even that, you're willing to just kind of, put away your incredulity and have a wait and see sort of attitude. And that's all they need to pull off their little scam. So it was a very effective, I would say very well funded. Certainly, they had to pay to become an exhibitor at there, and they had to get fake IDs and fake email addresses and sort of fake everything. And they have to pay the bills somehow between March and November, and then they still have to pay for the editing. So this is a well-funded uh, thing. I mean, it's how much was this project? How much was spent on this project? I don't know, $250,000 maybe. I mean, it's a big expenditure. So somebody is backing these people. I mean, unless they're trust fund kids, I doubt that. I mean,
Who knows? But one of the things I wanted to point out, and you alluded to, is that, I think what people may not know about this particular conference is number one, the I'll just kind of give an overview of the setup. So there were two entrances where you had to enter through metal detectors with relatively strict security. Additionally, there was at the check-in, you had to present identification. So there were a number of points where these guys could have been stopped, including at the very beginning when they registered as exhibitors. Now, I will say that as somebody who has planned events, they cost money, right, to put on. So any exhibitor often, is relatively unvetted, and I think that
oh,
that's a
you're
mistake.
glad because you've got to pay for the event somehow.
Right,
Exhibitors make that possible. So yeah, you're a little willing to kind of that seems a little strange, but okay. You
right,
know, I mean
right,
the money feels good, right? So they're able to tap into that.
right. Yeah, but I think it kind of brings to light a little bit of a bigger picture, right? Because I think never before have we had to be as cautious with regard to people trying to infiltrate CHD, the Maha movement, to get at Kennedy, to somehow discredit him, to get at any one of the officials who were going to be present, to get at some of the doctors who have been very vocal and demonized throughout all of the COVID kinds of things, because there is a real threat now to the pharmaceutical industry that I don't believe existed before COVID. Um, you know, Anti-vaxxers and people who have, and I wear that label with pride, by the way. I could care less at this point. But to be in this community has never been as visible, but we have been completely marginalized and vilified. um, I don't think it has been nearly as frightening, frankly, to be in this space as it is now, primarily because of what is, occurring with regard to exposure when it comes to some of these pharmaceutical companies, as well as some of the other actors at play here, right? Because they're very obviously financially motivated.
The broader context that people need to keep in mind is that the pharmaceutical industry and all of its extensive connections throughout the media world and advertising, governments all over the world, intelligence services around the world with bioweapons programs, and everything associated with that. Um, it's the most powerful industry that's ever existed in the history of industry. In the 18th century, people used to fear the East India Company. That was a large reason for why the founders decided to revolt against Britain, was because the East India Company was demanding an industrial monopoly on goods coming in or out of the colonies. All right. They said, that's ridiculous. We want to trade with whoever we want. Okay. Well, what do you know? Basically, the East India Company was willing to fight a war um, over American independence to keep its profits. So that's just a fact. Well, I tell you what, the pharmaceutical industry today makes the East India Company look like the local convenience store by comparison. It's
Right.
got power everywhere throughout all NGOs and nonprofits and government agencies and advertising, digital companies, you name it. And an industry so powerful that it was able to shut down 100 the societies of 194 nations almost simultaneously in the spring of 2020 to prepare the global population to receive its product. There's never been an industry in the history of humanity that is that powerful. That's how powerful they are.
Mhm.
So, yeah, COVID's over, but their power is stronger than ever. So, yeah, are they willing to do things like hire a couple of, British punks to come in and troll the CHD company? Yeah, that's just the beginning of what they're up to. They're up to a lot of things. And anybody who's on this side of the issue is um, is necessarily going to be um, is necessarily going is in some degree of risk and even danger. And this is real. This is not conspiracy theory. I mean, the good thing that comes out of this is that um, this is a very real incident and a documented case of a real scheme and a plot to get us. So, the claims that we're being paranoid or just making stuff up or we're conspiracy theorists, well, this was a conspiracy. You know, it just so happens we discovered it. But how many others are there that are out there? We don't entirely know. How many of these similar kind of plots go undiscovered? We don't know.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because you earlier brought up the Rockefeller Foundation, and I've talked at length about Rockefeller and the Flexner Report. I'm a practicing homeopath. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but so I'm very familiar with how the Rockefellers have had their hand in all of healthcare for the last, I won't say healthcare, I'll say sick care really is what they do. But regardless, this has been going on, since the turn of the century, right? So this is a long time coming. I think we need to be very prudent and very wary of people who try to sell us, frankly, on some kind of snake oil. So it's very, very important that those in this movement, especially, I think those of us who've been here for a longer period of time, are aware of these kinds of threats to our community. Those who are maybe newer to the conversation may not be as aware of
Hmm.
some of these threats, but
Yeah.
they've been going on for a very long time.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, in that sense, maybe some good comes out of this, just so that people can be wary. It can be difficult sometimes. One of the problems is that what we used to call the official science is so corrupted. For 3 years during COVID, we were told, well, this is the science, wear a mask. This is the science, put up plexiglass. This is the science, don't travel, don't have Thanksgiving, don't sing at church, don't go to church, don't shake hands. Right? I mean, these are use mail-in ballots, right? And it was all justified according to the science. And take your shot. And if you don't get your shot, then you're prolonging the pandemic, right? These were the claims that we heard, and hundreds, more than 100,000 papers came out that seem to confirm this. And I've seen more fake science come out in the last 5 years than I could have ever imagined. And I mean, so absurd. I mean, and the usual tricks over and over and over again. You've got subject bias, hidden definitions. You've got injuries kept out of out of the frame of the study timetable. You've got manipulation of dates. You've got just amazing things, whether it's the mask studies or the studies on how many lives vaccines have saved. I mean, you got the classic one of using these models, right? So, which are just silly. So we're inundated with these fake science. It's everywhere. And so sometimes I think that causes us to wonder, well, God, if all the official science is fake, I mean, what is true? And and so we allow ourselves to imagine that things that could be true, for which there's not really the evidence, because we've kind of lost trust in all the other evidence. So when some really nice guys who seem to be part of your community come along waving a study, saying something that's just a little shady, you might be more inclined to believe it
Right.
than otherwise. And that's what happened in this case. These guys figured this out, you know, that well, here's the other problem. We've lost trust in everything. So who do you trust? Well, you trust your community. You trust the people that are involved in a cause with you. You trust your friends and the people who share your values. So these guys show up, we're your friends, we share your values, we're on your side, we're against fake meat. Okay, so now you've checked already a lot of boxes. And so the human mind's emotionally prepared to go the next step, whatever that happens to be.
Well, and I think the community is very grateful for you bringing this to light. It's much needed. We need to understand and be wary of the people who are trying to infiltrate our movement. And, it's very unfortunate that it has to be that way.
It is
But frankly,
unfortunate.
yeah.
And by the way, I think we can just kind of go back to the point about CHD. Should they have
Mm,
caught this? Of course, they should have caught. But
yeah,
you can always look back and say, oh, this should have happened, that should have happened.
of course.
But, um, but I don't think that CHD should be embarrassed about this. I think they should just admit that they let these guys who didn't understand it. But there's a lot of people with a lot of speculative offerings um, that are showing up there. It's not really up to CHD to guarantee the effectiveness of every person. Um, I mean, I don't know. I didn't really go around to a lot of the exhibitors. There seems to be a lot of really good people. But if somebody comes up with, oh, I've got a grove of um, nectarine trees, the seeds of which, if you grind them up, have shown to be curative of cancer. Okay. All right. They want to exhibit. You're like, well, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, is it really going to be harmful for them to exhibit? Really? I mean, is it really up to CHD to certify the value of every product that's hawked by? I mean, I can tell you that that's not true in any other convention. We go to the pipe
Yeah.
fitters convention. There's going to be 1,000 exhibitors selling all kinds of pipes and wrenches and rust removers, right? You don't know if they all work. But um, what was different about these guys is that it's not that they were hawking some fake cure or something like that. They were there to do harm, and that's completely different, right? And like, there's these guys at the CHD conference that had a chair that you sit in, you get zipped up in, and it gives you like a sauna. Okay.
Mm.
Now you know, I looked at it, I thought, I don't know. I think I'd rather just go to a sauna. I don't need a sauna chair, with a zip up bag. I mean, that's a little weird. Um, and you don't have to like everything, but these guys were different. They were seeking to maliciously troll and trick people at the conference. So those are the people you need to really find and uproot and checking identities and all this kind of stuff. I mean, that's extremely important. I think that's the lesson here. I don't think the lesson is that you need to be overly strict about who exhibits at your conferences. I mean, it is to some extent the CHD event has turned into a bit, I guess, of a trade show in some ways. Maybe not that far, but it's got some elements of that. And I guess that's my point. It's like, well, that's okay. Buyer beware, right?
Right.
But what you want to find are the malicious actors who are using your event to make fun of and troll the community. Those are the ones you want to find, and those are the ones you want to get rid of. So if there's any lesson of this, it's like, okay, we could be better about finding those people without getting paranoid, but caution, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it is a fine line between paranoia
It is.
and keeping your sanity here. So,
Mm.
um, but overall, I will say, personally, I enjoyed myself. I met some really fantastic people, in fact, I did not even know that this was occurring. Often this, it was actually off in a small corner of the conference. And, I did not thankfully run into these guys. I'm sure my alarm bells would have been raised as
Well,
well.
maybe not, right? Maybe not. It's hard.
Perhaps.
It's hard to know.
Yeah,
The environment of these kinds of events, it's exuberant. There's a lot of trust. You don't want to humiliate people. You're very glad to introduce people into your community.
yeah.
You've got this openness of mind. Your attitude is all smiles and yes, yes, aren't we? We're making progress and that kind of stuff. And so that mental framework makes it difficult to have the presence of mind to go, hey, wait a minute. I think you guys are selling snake oil. Just
Absolutely.
shush.
Absolutely. Okay, I want you to tell us a little bit about Brownstone Institute. What are you doing with Brownstone, and how can people find you?
Yeah, brownstone.org. We were founded in the summer of 21 to continue in the spirit of the Great Barrington Declaration, which is just bringing good sense and good science to times that were fraught with peril during the height of lockdowns, really, and then shot mandates. And there needed to be some new venue out there that was examining ideological, philosophical, ideological, scientific, economic issues in light of what happened to us during the COVID period, always with an eye towards normalizing the world, putting human choice ahead of coercion as a central principle. So that's what we do. We published, I think, more than 3,000 articles now. We publish something new every day, sometimes 2 or 3 new things. We've published 20 books. We hold a lot of private retreats for scientists, journalists, and we fund a lot of Brownstone fellows who are academics that have fired from the universities or journalists that were kicked out of the traditional venues, whatever. We've become a real lifeline of support for many, many great intellectuals in our community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the work that you've been doing. Again, brownstone.org, if our listeners are interested in hearing more about what they have going on. Okay, Jeffrey, I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Normally, I ask 8 rapid fire questions of all of our guests. Are you up for it?
Okay,
Okay.
here we go.
All right. Number 1, if you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind is apple cider vinegar. I just like that's just the greatest thing ever.
That's a great one.
Well, but there's many times when you're kind of feeling run down. You don't really know why, but I always want to lay on a sofa. I'm dreading walking around. Suddenly, oh, my electrolytes are on. You forget. Then the apple cider vinegar, boom, you're just magically better. So I love that stuff.
Amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Number 2, tell us something most people don't know about you.
Oh, that I conducted a Gregorian chant choir for 10 years and exercised a decisive influence in getting all traditional Gregorian chants put into the commons so that they can belong to the whole of humanity rather than publishers. Nobody knows that. So
That's amazing. All right. This actually is a nice segue. If I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
Well, I like everything from the happy music. The happiest music in the whole history of humanity is American Ragtime by Scott Joplin. I mean, it's not possible to be sad when that music is on. So, yeah, I relied on that during the darkest times of lockdowns.
Absolutely. All right. Number four, what is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Oh, that's not a surprise. I like yeah, I like a good martini, basically. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
And I shouldn't, but I do.
What is the most influential book you've ever read?
Um, Probably Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross, because it tells a story about how suffering is draws you closer to God and makes
Mm,
you stronger as a person, and that sometimes that suffering is brought about for the sole purpose of achieving that. I always go back to that book for some reason. It was written in the 16th century,
mm,
but I think it's just it really hit me. Instead of just regretting your troubles all the time, maybe you need to see your troubles and your suffering as meaningful,
mm.
purposeful, and good.
Amazing. Wonderful. All right. What does the word revolution mean to you?
Well, it means overturning what is and replacing it with something better. So many times in history, revolutions don't turn out well, but it's up to us to make sure they do. And I don't accept the view of somebody like Hegel, who thinks that there's some baked-in logic to history, and we're all just being swept along by these impersonal forces. I don't believe that. History is what we make of it, and some revolutions turn out well, and I hope that the revolution that that we're leading here turns out well.
Amen to that. All right. What does the word remedy mean to you?
Yeah, I don't have an instant answer for that. Nothing profound, and but I will say this, that sometimes the remedies for the problems are not the solutions that everybody thinks they are. I'll just give you a quick example of this. I was looking at the data over the decline of American health over the last 15 years, where Americans have had unprecedented access to conventional medical services like we've never had before,
Mhm,
ever. And everybody brags about that. Well, that's great that we have more access to doctors, medicines, pharmaceutical products, and conventional medicine we ever have. How come during this exact period, American health has plummeted? Whether you're talking about chronic disease or obesity, or the number of people taking psych drugs, by every measure, American health has plummeted over the last 15 years, during which time access to and consumption of conventional medical resources has increased. So explain that paradox to me, right? I mean,
absolutely.
that's a difficult problem. Sometimes the remedy, the real remedy, is staying away from uh, getting as far distant as you can from whatever the official system is telling you to do.
All right. And lastly, if you could impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
Mm, yeah, I would say uh, stop regretting your sufferings. Stop complaining about your inconveniences. Stop wishing for some life without pain.
Mm,
Um, God has given you breath and a brain and hands, and what we're supposed to do with those things is work, fix things, overcome, find joy. Find joy in the thing that you think you don't want to do. Like figure it out. Figure it out. Make that your path to happiness. It necessarily goes through uh, the the struggle. The struggle and happiness are part of the same thing. And it's just a matter of changing your outlook. I'll just give you a quick example of this. On Sunday, When I was leaving after this conference, it was an exhausting conference. I did a 2-hour interview with the New York Times. We had this big upheaval with these crazy kids. And it was just, there was a lot to take on. And I saw a friend at the airport, and she said, "Oh God, you just must be exhausted after everything you've been through." And my first thought was, I am. But then I decided to change the message. I said, you know what? I feel really invigorated by that. I feel quite the opposite. I feel energized as never before. I'm telling you, as soon as those words came out of my mouth, they became real.
Hmm.
As soon as I said that, there's something about our brain hearing our own voice telling us how we are that changes things. And it did. It changed everything for me. So
Absolutely.
it was a great lesson for me. I'm going to start doing that. Like as soon as you're ready to start complaining, like stop it and say something the opposite. Well, here's a chance to clean up that broken glass. I've needed to sweep this floor. Figure it out. And I think that's a path to a happier life.
I couldn't agree more. Jeffrey Tucker, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time in telling this story. I think it's very important to get these kinds of stories out there so that those of us who've been in this movement, those of us who are new to this movement, are aware of our surroundings and what goes on and how we can insulate and protect ourselves as a community. So thank you so much. For those of you listening, please go to brownstone.org to learn more information about the work that Jeffrey does. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, Remedy Revolution is here for you.